I'm Miles. I'm 32. I sold my first startup last year for $60 million. I can afford a house in Malibu, a cabin in Montana, and the kind of health insurance my family never had growing up. But what I can't buy, what still stings, is the fact that my own mother used my childhood pain as leverage, then made me believe love had to be earned through sacrifice. I grew up in a rusted-out trailer off Farm Road 2210 in rural Texas. No insulation, no running water half the year, and no privacy. Just 3 people, 1 room, and a rotating roster of broken promises. My mom, Linda, was a laundry worker at the state hospital. My younger brother, Troy, he was the golden child. Even when he was stealing from the neighbors or skipping school, Mom defended him like a full-time attorney. Me? I kept my head down, did the chores, made good grades, and still got called cold because I didn't cry enough at Grandma's funeral. But I learned early. If I worked harder, stayed quiet, and kept the fridge stocked, even with my after-school job, I might earn 5 minutes of peace. Maybe even a thank you if I was lucky. I left home at 17 with a duffel bag and $63 in crumpled bills. Slept in my beat-up Corolla for a month outside community college, showered at the gym, coded from the public library, and got my associates in a year. 2 more years, 2 scholarships, and a 1 in a million chance to intern at a tiny medtech firm that would later become my launchpad. I didn't call home for a long time. But when I finally did, after my first real paycheck, Mom didn't ask how I was. She asked if I could wire her $200 for Troy's truck registration. That became the pattern. I'd call, she'd ask, and I'd send, even if it meant skipping meals again. When I launched CareLoop, an AI tool for monitoring seniors with dementia, I built it for people like my mom. People who deserved dignity but never had the resources. When investors came calling, I stayed grounded. I kept a quiet apartment, wore off-the-rack button-downs, and paid off my mom's mortgage on the broken-down house she'd inherited after Grandpa died. I even paid for Troy's rehab twice. Each time, Mom would say, "You're a good son, Miles. One day we'll all be proud of you." One day. Like everything I'd done so far still wasn't enough. A few months after the acquisition, I decided to buy land in Montana. A place with sky that goes on forever, away from pitch decks and industry parties. It was a $23 million property, and I wanted to pay half in cash. Not to show off, just to simplify the deal. Beat out competing offers. I needed a place to think, to breathe. The bank was nervous, of course. Pulling $15 million in physical cash isn't exactly routine. But after 2 days of paperwork, private security, and insurance forms, it was done. I didn't want to store the cash in my apartment. I didn't trust the banks to hold it last minute either. So I called Mom. Her voice softened when I told her. "Of course, baby. Bring it here, that old gun safe your granddad left. It could survive a bomb." It wasn't the first time I'd let her hold something important. But it was the first time I hesitated. Still, I told myself, this is your mother. She wouldn't. So I drove the 5 hours back to that same dirt road, now paved over with brittle blacktop. The trailer was gone, replaced by a modest single-story home I helped her buy. Troy was there too, surprisingly sober. He even hugged me, said he was turning things around. Mom cooked her famous chicken and dumplings. We laughed. We sat around the table like we hadn't in over a decade. For a few hours, it felt like maybe we were healing. I locked the duffel bags in the safe, triple-checked the code. We played cards till midnight. I went to bed in the guest room with a stomach full of carbs and a heart I hadn't realized was aching for home. But when I woke up at 7 a.m., the house was silent. No sound of Mom's coffee grinder. No Troy blasting old Creed songs from the bathroom. The back door was wide open. I walked to the safe. The door was ajar. And when I pulled it open, it was empty. Every single dollar was gone. And in its place, taped to the inside of the door, was a single Post-it note, written in my mother's hand. "You have your success. Let us have our freedom." I stood there frozen, the metal of the safe still warm from her touch. But what she didn't know What neither of them knew was that what they took wasn't what it seemed. And that's when I smiled. I don't remember how long I stood there staring at the empty safe. Could have been 5 seconds. Could have been an hour. All I know is my knees gave out, and I slid to the floor like a sack of wet cement, the door of that old gun safe still swinging open beside me. The Post-it note was crooked, barely hanging on, and the words kept replaying in my head like a bad joke. You have your success. Let us have our freedom. What kind of mother writes something like that? Like I was holding them hostage by, what? Succeeding too much? Providing too often? Being the one who never asked for anything? I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. Tried Troy next. One ring, then dead silence. Blocked. My body felt cold all over. I stumbled to the kitchen like maybe this was some messed up prank. But her coffee cup was gone. Her toothbrush. Troy's duffel bag that sat by the door the night before. Also gone. The keys to her car were missing from the hook. It wasn't a prank. They were gone. I opened every drawer, every closet, even the attic crawl space. Nothing. Not a single sign that they'd ever planned on staying. And the worst part? The dinner. The laughter. The fake normalcy from the night before. They'd looked me in the eye while plotting to steal everything. I sat on the porch with my head in my hands. The sun had barely crested the horizon, and already the world felt different. Like I'd crossed into some cruel parallel version of my life where love was transactional and betrayal wore my mother's perfume. I called my lawyer first, then the sheriff, then the security company that had helped transport the money. The deputy who showed up was polite but distant. You said the safe was in her house, right? Yeah, but I locked it. I set the code myself. He nodded slowly. And you voluntarily brought the money here? Yes, but, Mr. Barrett, I'm not saying it's not theft, but without forced entry and with it being your mother's property, this could be complicated legally. Complicated. That's the word everyone kept using. The bank rep said it. The lawyer said it. Even my therapist, when I finally called her later that night, whispered it like a prayer. But nothing felt complicated to me. It felt simple. I trusted the two people who had watched me sleep in the back seat of a car at 17, eat ketchup packets for dinner at 19, and build something from nothing by 25. And those same people had waited until I was most vulnerable to gut me clean. The press caught wind fast. Startup CEO robbed by own mother. The headlines practically wrote themselves. I turned down interviews, refused to respond to LinkedIn messages. I stopped going out. Worse, people I thought I knew started acting different. Friends would check in only to ask what really happened. A few of my investors grew distant. One even hinted that trusting your family with $15 million wasn't the best risk assessment. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the way they smiled over dinner, knowing full well what they were about to do. The way my mother held my hand and said, "I'm proud of you," with zero intention of sticking around to see what I'd become next. And yet, a part of me still held on. Maybe they'd come back. Maybe it was some twisted cry for help. Some addiction relapse or mental breakdown. I told myself that until the day I got the voicemail. A burner number, 1 minute and 12 seconds. Troy's voice, slurred but smug. "Hey, Miles, you probably know by now we're gone. Don't freak out. Mom's fine. She deserves this, man. We both do. You think success makes you better than us? You've always looked down on us like we were charity cases. Well, now the table's turned. You've got your brains, we've got your money. Call it even." Then he laughed. He actually laughed. Like it was a punchline. I dropped the phone. I cried. Not the kind of crying where you wipe your eyes and move on. The kind where you make animal sounds you didn't know your body could produce. The kind where your own breath betrays you. For 3 straight weeks, I didn't leave my apartment. Didn't answer calls. Didn't respond to Jason when he came to the door. I stopped eating. Lost 12 pounds. The nightmares were constant. Not of them stealing, but of me giving it to them with a smile. Until one night, out of sheer instinct, I opened my laptop and pulled up the backup interface of the security system. Something clicked in my brain. One tiny detail I'd almost forgotten about. Each duffel bag had a micro tag. Passive RFID, not visible, not advertised, but traceable. And one of those tags just pinged from a private villa outside of Curacao. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I just sat there in the dark, staring at the blinking dot on my laptop screen. The RFID tracker I'd forgotten was sewn into the duffel lining. It pulsed from the northwest coast of Curacao, about 30 minutes outside Willemstad, a resort town, lush palms, gated villas. So they hadn't just taken the money, they'd gone full Bond villain. I'd been dying inside for 3 weeks, and they were sipping cocktails by a private infinity pool. I don't know what flipped in me, but something shifted. Maybe it was rage, maybe it was survival, but I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and shaved my damn face for the first time in days. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time since that Post-it note, I saw something I recognized. Control. They thought I'd sit still, grieve, spiral. But I had 2 things they didn't: receipts and patience. The next morning, I flew to Miami under a friend's name, switched planes, landed in Curacao just after midnight. I didn't check into a resort. I rented a no-frills guest house 10 minutes from where the signal was last active and started watching. For 2 days, I saw nothing. The RFID tracker stayed still. I thought maybe they'd left the bag behind or tossed it. Maybe I was chasing ghosts. But on the 3rd day, just before sunset, I saw her. Linda Barrett, my mother, wearing oversized designer sunglasses and a white sun hat, stepping out of a black car like she was royalty. Her hair was lighter, dyed maybe. Her posture was different. Straight. But I knew the way she flicked her wrist when she walked, like she was brushing off the past. Troy came out right behind her, shirtless, tan, laughing at something. He had a gold chain now, a cigar in his hand, a glass of something that wasn't water. It hit me harder than I expected. They looked happy, carefree, like they hadn't gutted the only person who ever tried to give them a way out. I could have called the cops right then. I had the coordinates. I had proof. The money was fake, sure. But they didn't know that. Legally, they'd still crossed several lines. But no, they wanted freedom? I'd give them a version of it they'd never forget. I spent the next 2 days mapping out their routine. What time they left the villa, where they ate, what stores they hit. Every time they paid in cash, I logged it, watched, waited. And then finally, like the universe was scripting this, Troy made a mistake. He walked into a luxury car dealership, loud, arrogant, trying to test drive a white McLaren parked out front. I watched from a block away as he opened the duffel bag to flash a stack of crisp $500 bills to the salesman. I knew the look, that hesitation, that quiet moment when a man thinks, something's not right here. Half an hour later, the manager stepped outside to make a call. He didn't notice me leaning against a shaded wall with a cup of coffee, blending in with the tourists. But I heard him clearly. He was calling a contact in customs. By nightfall, I knew what would happen next. And I didn't even have to move a finger. The next morning, a quiet black van pulled up outside the villa. 4 plainclothes officers stepped out. Calm, professional, no drama. I watched from across the street, hidden behind a parked delivery truck. They knocked. Politely. Troy opened the door, shirtless again. He was smiling. But when they stepped inside, and I saw my mother's face appear in the window, wide-eyed, lips parted in frozen disbelief, I felt nothing. No joy. No vindication. Just empty, like I was watching strangers get what they deserved. But here's the part that knocked the wind out of me. 10 minutes later, an officer emerged holding the duffel bag. Except it wasn't mine. It was identical. Same color, same brand, but newer, clean, untouched. I checked the tracker again. Still pinging. Still inside. Still under the floorboards? I zoomed in on the map, tilted the angle, and that's when I saw it. The tracker wasn't in the villa. It was buried 50 feet behind it, beneath the gazebo by the waterline. Whatever they were carrying inside, it wasn't the real bag. They had no idea. They'd stolen the wrong thing. I didn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't grief that kept me up. It was clarity. The bag Troy flashed at the dealership. It wasn't the real one. It looked identical, but I knew mine. I'd bought that exact duffel 6 years ago when I was still bootstrapping my startup and sleeping on air mattresses during pitch tours. It had a scratch across the zipper and a frayed seam on the bottom corner. The one he showed? Clean. New. The RFID signal hadn't moved in days. But the bags? They had. That meant only one thing. They buried the real bag. And they don't know it's still being tracked. It was buried behind the villa, under the gazebo. And the cops just left. They took them in for questioning, probably over the fake bills Troy flashed. But it didn't stick. Curacao law enforcement was polite, but uninterested in international family drama. Unless I could prove criminal intent or laundering, it was civil, not criminal. So my mother and brother were released within hours. They strolled out like nothing happened. Troy even lit a damn cigar. I should have been furious. But I wasn't. Because now I had the advantage. They thought they had me broken, spinning in place like a wounded animal. But they had no idea I'd already started moving. I called Kyle, the private security contact I'd used during the original transport, and told him everything. Within 12 hours, he flew out with 2 of his most discreet ops guys. No suits, no earpieces, just 2 quiet men with calm eyes who knew how to disappear in plain sight. We set up a rented villa just 3 blocks away. I wired it with 3 laptops, 2 tracking monitors, and a signal jammer I'd use only if they tried to move the bag. I didn't want to stop them yet. I just wanted to watch. Every movement, every whisper, every plan they didn't realize I already saw coming. They stayed cautious for about a day after the arrest, but by night 2, it was back to luxury shopping and beachfront dinners. They thought it was over, that they'd gotten away with it. And then, finally, I saw what I was waiting for. Around 2 a.m., Troy stumbled out to the backyard, barefoot, flashlight in one hand, a bottle of rum in the other. He stood by the gazebo for a long time, just swaying. Then he crouched, started digging. Slow, clumsy. I held my breath as I watched from the live drone feed above. A minute later, my mother came out too. She was barefoot, in a robe, whispering something sharp under her breath. I couldn't make out the words, but her face said everything. Fear, paranoia, that creeping sense that something was off. They unzipped the real bag, held the bundles of fake bills in their hands again. Troy started arguing. Mom pulled the flashlight away. I watched him point toward the horizon like maybe they should run. She shook her head, mouth tight, and then did something strange. She pulled out her phone, and she called. Me. My own phone lit up. Mom, too. A burner, I answered, silent. Miles? Her voice was shaking. We just need to know. Was any of it? She stopped, took a breath. Is the money real? I didn't say anything. Please, just tell me. You're smarter than both of us combined. If you did something, if you tricked us, just say it. We'll disappear. You'll never hear from us again. We need to know. I let the silence hang for 5 full seconds before I spoke. You buried it. Click. She hung up. I watched on the drone feed as she sank to her knees. Troy tossed the flashlight into the grass like a child throwing a tantrum. They sat there in the dirt for a long time, surrounded by millions in worthless paper and the weight of a plan that just collapsed in on itself. I could have ended it there. But that would have been mercy. They didn't give me mercy. So I called Richard, my attorney. told him to push forward with the financial fraud filing in Curacao. And then I called the IRS. See, I hadn't just marked the bills with RFID. I'd marked them with trace amounts of non-toxic UV dye, undetectable without the right equipment, but enough to trigger scrutiny in banknote scanners, especially in countries with anti-laundering regulations. And every transaction they'd made for the last month, every boutique, every car rental, every luxury dinner tip, all traceable, all flagged, all taxable. And here's the part that still makes me grin. My mother? She'd opened a Shell account in Belize, one she thought was invisible. But she used my old birth date as the PIN, the same one on the locket I gave her when I was 10. I now had access to every dollar they'd tried to hide. I always thought closure would come like a courtroom verdict, handcuffs, headlines, some dramatic public ending that would tell the world they were wrong. I was right. But that's not how it happened. It started with a wire freeze. Linda's Belize account, where she'd stashed over $700,000 from her New Life fund, was locked within 48 hours of my lawyer filing the disclosure, thanks to the digital fingerprint I had linked to her login. Every transaction, every alias, every cent, flagged, frozen, and reported to both Curacao financial authorities and the U.S. Treasury. Troy's fake business account in the Cayman Islands didn't fare much better. Turns out, when you buy luxury watches with traceable bills tied to counterfeit indicators, red flags go up fast. Especially when those same bills show up in high-end boutiques across 3 continents, all pinged from the same serial batches the IRS had been warned about. By the end of the week, their accounts were frozen. By the end of the month, they were banned from re-entry into the U.S. for ongoing fraud investigations. I didn't need them in prison. I just needed them cornered. Troy broke first. I got a call from a Curacao number I didn't recognize. I let it ring twice, then answered. Miles, it's me. He didn't say his name. He didn't have to. He sounded wrecked, slurred, like someone who hadn't slept in days. Whatever this is, whatever you're doing, you win, okay? We're broke. Mom's sick. She's not eating. Her hair's falling out. We can't get a doctor to take her insurance. No one will hire us, rent to us, help us. We can't even leave this island now without getting detained at customs. I didn't say anything. He kept going. I didn't know about the tracking or the money being fake. That was all her. I went along with it, man. I thought we were getting even, but I didn't know she was gonna... He stopped, voice cracking. I'm sorry. There it was. The apology I'd waited my whole life for. But it didn't land. Not because it wasn't real, but because it didn't matter anymore. I'd already moved on. I hung up. A week later, the final wire came through, from the Curacao government. The fake bills had been confiscated, processed, and returned to me as evidence, just in case I needed to confirm the forensic tagging. But the real prize wasn't the paper. It was the quiet. No more burner calls. No more Instagram posts of champagne and fake smiles. No more waking up in the middle of the night wondering how they could do it. They had nothing left to steal. Not from my bank account. Not from my memory. Not from who I'd become. 6 months after it all, I bought a small cabin in northern Montana. Not the flashy estate I'd originally planned, just a place with pine trees, quiet mornings, and a view of the lake that doesn't ask me to explain myself. Jason came back. Not because I asked him to, but because he saw the person I'd grown into, not the shell I was before. We're not picking up where we left off. We're starting from scratch, which honestly feels better. People ask me sometimes if I regret trusting them, if I'd go back and do things differently. And the truth is, yeah, I regret a lot, but not the love I gave them. Because love, even misused, says more about me than it does about them. What I've learned, what I carry now, is that trust isn't weakness. It's power. And reclaiming it? That's the kind of revenge you can live with. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect you, I hope you know this. Their actions say everything about them and nothing about your worth. And if you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments, whether it's fresh or healed over. And if this one stayed with you, maybe stick around. There's more where this came from. Not drama, just truth. The kind that helps you breathe again. Thanks for listening. Really,